Hello, welcome to the Week in Review. I am Mamadou Mbouch, sitting in for Ade Darami. Our regular viewers, of course, you know the drill. But for the sake of the newcomers, this is how we do it. We take 10 headline stories of the week and digest them, as it were, go into some of the talking points to provide understanding and clarity and the rest of it. So this week, we will discuss GBUS's publication of the estimates, telling us the state of our GDP and inflation. We will also look at MOPSI. During the week, they and their partners hosted what is called a cultural conference on curriculum. We'll go into some of those details. And we'll also talk about the case of a successful PPP, public-private partnership in delivering public services. And to help me digest some of these issues is Mr. Esa Jala, journalist. Thank you very much, Esa.
You're welcome, thanks.
You're welcome. So first, let's get cracking here. One of the most important documents, really, in our history was published during the week. Let's just take a look.
Dauda A. Jallow, the Gambia's Attorney General and Minister of Justice, said out of 265 recommendations made by the TRRC, the government has accepted 263 recommendations, which include the prosecution of former President Yaya Jammeh, members of AFPRC Transitional Council, and former Vice President Aissatou Njie Seydi for her role in the April 10th and 11th student killings in 2000.
This government understands that the duty of the state to investigate and bring to justice the perpetrators of gross human rights violations is the duty that it owes not only towards victims, but also towards society as a whole.
Hello, Esa, of course, we discussed this before, that for this one, we all remember with the Jana Commission, there was a mixed reception. A lot of people were not quite happy with one or two of the recommendations, what was implemented, the government white paper on the Jana Commission. But this one, you seem to have this approbatory, almost applauding responses from all corners. Everybody seemed to think that that's a good thing. Why do you think that is? Because to me, it seems as if they're likely stuck to the script. Really, we wanted this, and this is what you have to look at.
It is as a result of what happened with the Jana Commission, and a lot of people were skeptical as to what the government is going to do with this other one, and many actually didn't believe government was going to take this thing seriously. If you look at the history running towards the presentation of the report, the acceptance of the APRC, twinning with NPP, and a lot of people were skeptical. What would they do with the TRRC recommendations? And I being a communications officer there, was asked several times what would happen to your report. But I had always said, well, this is left to government to do whatever they do with it, because at the time that they are going to issue the white paper, the TRRC would not be in being, so we wouldn't have a say in it. So, but then generally, particularly the victims were pleasantly surprised with the outcome of the white paper.
Absolutely. I'm talking there about being skepticism. It was interesting. This is what Reed Brody said, very much involved with the Victim Center, the international lawyer. He says, now the government will have to demonstrate with concrete actions to an increasingly skeptical public that it actually has the determination to bring the perpetrators to book. So we talked about this, the concrete actions, because from now on, the implementation stage, laws will have to be enacted. We are told that a special court will have to be prepared. Cases will have to be prepared. Yaya Jammeh to be brought into custody. A long way to go, right?
A very long way to go. You see, if all these steps are even going to take place the way they are, it is going to be a very long process, knowing legal issues don't take short periods. If you look at setting up the court, setting up an investigation wing of the court, because what the Justice Minister have said is that some of the investigations that the TRRC may have conducted may not be admissible in court, or would not be the right way that they are supposed to be able to use those evidences in court. So that is going to be another process followed by a process of getting these people to court, them getting their attorneys or lawyers to defend them. So it is going to be a very, very long process. But on the whole, you look at it, the acceptance of the report is a giant step towards all of that. Well, actually, they've even gone beyond, because what the CSOs were asking was a full implementation of the report. Now they have not done the full one, but they actually satisfied the CSOs and the victims per se that they have rejected the amnesty, the proposal to grant Sana Sabal amnesty, and the government accepted it, and also accepted to implement some of the most of the recommendations of the TRRC.
Absolutely, we'll come back to the rejections. When I got news that our president was going to the 16th AU summit, of heads of state, Equatorial Guinea, I said, wow, what a coincidence. I mean, he went the day after. Then I thought, I wonder, it will be odd, really, behind the scenes, if they did not talk about Jammeh. I wonder whether we're thinking about, because that's going to be through diplomatic channels.
Yeah, it would be, yeah, probably,
it
yeah.
Will be quite, I wonder if they would discuss something like that. I cannot imagine that not coming up, just the two of them in private.
Yeah, just the two of them. I don't know also who are the people who constitute this delegation. It would be interesting if the Justice Minister is part of it, to talk to his counterpart.
No, but I understand that the Justice Minister is part of the delegation, I think.
Yeah, that would be interesting to talk to his counterpart on the possibility of an extradition and how that process would go on. That is going to be a very interesting closed-door meeting between the two heads of state and the justice ministers.
Yes, sir. So now to the rejections. You've mentioned one already, Sana Sabali. Quite interesting there. Quite clearly, a self-confessed killer. Absolutely, even though he called it self-defense, didn't he? But again, it appeared as if he cooperated by all accounts, really. He really cooperated, and they recommended amnesty, and the government says no. Well, what do you make of that?
What I understood about the granting of amnesty to Sana was not necessarily that his cooperation was because Sana it would be difficult to try on crimes against humanity, because the status of that came after 1994, so the law cannot be, set retroactive, for however they call it. I'm not too sure about that. Yes, that may be the thing. But probably what the victims may be contesting was that then he can be tried for murder of all those individual people who were killed. That is one thing. So it is as if those victims, early victims of the Yahya Jammeh regime, were looking for justice for the killing of their family members, and that pressure actually paid off, with government deciding to say, no, we don't accept this amnesty granted for Sana. Instead, we're going to try.
But this is a very interesting one. So you mean Sana's crimes don't really fall within
that's
the
what I understand. Yes. That is the crimes against humanity.
That's the crimes against humanity.
Crimes against humanity, because that is committed during the 1994 November 11 coup attempt. Yes,
that's it.
Yes. So that is the difficulty, as I understand. I'm not a lawyer, but that is the explanation that I have had. That because the law that would try people for crimes against humanity came after November 1994, so it cannot be brought back for him to be tried for crimes against humanity. Because if he were to be tried, if he were guilty, or if he were accused of crimes against humanity, he cannot be amnested, because crimes against humanity cannot be amnested, torture cannot be amnested. So, but because it didn't fall within that period, so he wasn't, that was the reason why he actually was granted for amnesty.
I poked a bit further because it's quite interesting, because something similar, a similar theme arises when we look at the Director General of the State Intelligence Services, so they recommended, the TRRC recommended that this person be banned from serving in public office, as it were, but the government rejected that, saying that whatever was committed doesn't fall within the purview of the...
Interesting enough, I think was it yesterday, they came out with a clarification that they did not reject the recommendation. So they explained it, therefore I can't remember exactly what they have said. But what happened was because what they have accused him of happened after not within the period that TRRC was mandated to investigate. And this was why that wasn't counted as something that government was going to look at. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have rejected that thing that he had done that required the ban. So for now, we now question, what are they going to do? Now they're telling us they didn't reject it, but they didn't agree with the TRRC to ban him. What are they going to do? What is going to happen to his faith in being adversely mentioned? Is he still going to remain in office? Because they have said that they are going to remove all those people who have been adversely mentioned and are serving in government, you know, until further notice, that they're going to be suspended until the law and whatever is done.
Would he be one of them?
Yes. So would that be? So that is the question that many people are asking now.
Absolutely. And when I heard their argument, and I saw the TRRC says what they accuse the DG of is tampering with evidence at the SIS in 2017. Even if that is not covered, it's not within the purview of the TRC hearings, as it were. Still, he did something wrong. There must be another process that must hold him to account.
Yeah, that is the general idea. So you know, because it's a bit confusing. Now, what he had done outside the mandated period of the TRRC actually affects the work of the TRRC. And in the TRRC Act, if you do anything that is contrary or that has impeded TRRC investigation, then you are liable for something. So that is a very confusing situation for me. I don't understand. But then, quite enough, that action that they have accused him of have actually impeded the TRRC to be able to investigate properly what happened at the NIA, because witnesses were taken around the NIA and they got completely lost because all the structures were demolished and they were all brand new. They couldn't tell you exactly the routine, where they were taken, where they were detained, and where they were tortured. They keep guessing because things have been changed. So that actually affected. It has made the investigators not to get the clear picture as to how events happened there, according to the witnesses that were taken there, whether they're actually telling the truth or not. So these are issues that were actually that came into to the notice of TRRC.
Absolutely. There are really so many themes to talk about. You can never really exhaust it, but maybe we'll finally end up on Never Again Memorial Arch.
Yeah, another controversial one where the TRRC thought that they could do it because it is their mandate. It is the only Truth Commission that has a mandate to give reparation. And then the fact that to rename the arch was part of the reparations for the victims, as that is memorialization.
Absolutely.
So the TRRC at the time thought that they could do that because they are mandated to give reparations, but then the government had other ideas at the time. But other people connected that also to political reasons at the time, that, you know, they were flirting with the APRC. You know, so that was the reason. But thank God it has been accepted, and it is going to be a memorial arch.
Absolutely, and we still have a long way to go to reparations and all the rest of it. Thank you very much there, Esa, for your views. Now to our next story. The Gambia Bureau of Statistics released the revised 2020 and provisional 2021 GDP, Gross Domestic Product surveys. So it estimates that we're going to have there's going to be a 4.3% growth. But what does it say about inflation? Let's just take a look at this.
I've never seen it. I've been here for a long time, for about 3 decades now. But I've never seen double-digit inflation in this country. It's my first time seeing it. 11.7%. It's way too high.
That was it. He said after 30 years working there, he's never seen this one before, double digits. That was Director of Statistics at GBOS, Samba Barrow. We're not surprised. That's why we've seen essentials, commodity prices, things are going up.
Yeah.
You feel it at home.
Everything is going up, and you know we're all feeling it, and the noise is getting louder everywhere. People are complaining about the high cost of living, and in fact, in the past, not long ago, the government reacted in trying to cut down cost. you know, in its own operation. So a lot of the things are interconnected, and it is getting worse because of what is happening elsewhere in Ukraine, for example. And we are going to be feeling the effect, as time goes on, because Gambia literally doesn't export much, and so it is going to affect countries like us, where there's a competition now for the availability of grains, which is going to affect the cost of bread and things like that. So the cost of fuel, we have seen it. Government said they have subsidized it, but it's still high. If they hadn't subsidized, one would wonder how much the cost of per liter of fuel is going to be, particularly petrol, is going to be, because right now it's around close to $70.
Certainly, these phenomena, they tend to hit the poor hardest, isn't it? Be it globally, the developing countries who are feeling it, the pinch. Within the country, the poor within will feel the pinch hardest, isn't it? It will eat more into the little income that
the poor are largely the consumers. And then if all these environmental activities around the economy happens, the poor would wonder what would happen, because what the poor sells doesn't sell well, or would be controlled as into what it is going to be bought for. And then in return, what the poor is going to buy from the proceeds, is getting higher. If you increase the amount of fuel, it is going to reflect on the transportation of goods and services, and that is also going to affect the cost of goods and services, and the poor are going to feel the pinch at the bottom.
Absolutely. And it seems there's no end in sight. The pandemic had wrought really its damage, and now the war. So you've got this compound. Who knows what can add to that later on, and there's really no end in sight. It's an extraordinary situation.
It is, and there's this saying here that but anything that goes up don't come down, and we've known when we were younger, we know what prices of certain commodities are, and they've never gone back to those prices. So look at the cost of bread, how it is rising and rising all the time. Now other people are selling bread for $15 instead of the $10 mark that has been put across. You look at the transport fares, it is increasing all the time, and like I said, it is going to affect people who are bringing basic commodities to the markets to sell. So if we increase the fares, they're going to increase the cost of basic commodities, and that means the people who are responsible to for fish money would have to pay more to be able to put something on the table.
That's exactly, that was going to be my next question. When we face these things, obviously the government has a role to play. Really, you keep hearing ministers of finance sort of trying to come up with ideas of how to curb inflation. They have their own economic lingo on that. But again, we have to adapt at home.
Yeah, we have to adapt, and we have to cut costs.
Yes.
We have to reduce some of the things that we don't need, really, and concentrate on the more essential things, that are mainly basic, day-to-day basic survival, of families. But if we, for example, now we are away from one feast, we are getting into another one. It is not necessary for people to get into things that they can't afford. Everybody wants to slaughter a ram, and it is not obligatory for everybody, and then pressure is put on the few people who are providing. So I think these are issues that people need to look at as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much there, Esa Jallow. Now let's go on to our next story. MOPSI, the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, and another association called the Africa Curriculum Association, and UNESCO held in Banjul the third African Continental Conference on Curriculum. Here, let's listen to Momodou Jeng, the Director of Curriculum at MOPSI, to tell us why.
Therefore, the theme for this conference, that is Education, Technology, and Curriculum Alignment, I believe we require a paradigm shift in terms of the pedagogy that we apply in schools, in terms of the way we design and conduct examination and assessment, as well as the way we monitor and follow up on learning outcomes.
Yes, I mean, with this one, I take it the whole world are grappling with this, how they integrate technology into your curriculum, into your educational system, and he said it there, there's going to be a paradigm shift. But all the resources it will take, all the commitments it will take. But huge challenge, but a necessary one.
Yeah, huge, particularly for Africa and for developing countries, because you see, technology relies on energy, you know, and our energy situation is really sad. If you want to incorporate technology into our curriculum, that means you want to have cheap and reliable energy that would help you to develop technology, because that runs on energy. The other thing is it using technology in enhancing education, or actually, you know, technological development in education? I don't know how to put this, but in terms of teaching people about new technology, or is it integrating technology in helping us in our education? For example, there was a scheme that I was going to get involved, and for example, I had suggested to one principal at one point that, why is your school having all the best teachers and then other schools, other parts of the country don't have it? Don't you think you should be able to share? And at that time we talked about having a scheme that we would work on, and we'll call it Where There Is No Teacher. And in that is going to be using the curriculum that they are using, and using the teachers that are teaching the syllabus, for example, and then distributing that to other schools that don't have the privilege to have it, so they can have the same teachers, the same syllabus going there. So these are things that need to be looked at in terms of when we are improving teaching in our country, because the balance is you know, it is not balanced properly. If you look at the quality of education in the urban area and that in the rural areas.
That's it. And in talking about the energy factor, so you're bringing the sort of structural interdependence, really, for you to see outcomes, as it were. Anywhere you have a weak link, you might not see the outcome that you want. That is really what makes our situation very, very difficult. Hence the need for this institutional reform, as we call it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is significant to put that in our curriculum, the technology part, because see, technology doesn't necessarily only mean doing something that would do with electronics and all whatnot, but it can even help in farming. You know, new ways of doing other things, new ways of buying and selling. It can be easier for people to be able to sell their products, you know, using new technology, you know, in finance, in all sorts of things. So the energy part that I'm talking about, because this, I think, in a country, for a country to develop, one needs to have good source of energy, and then one needs to have good communication infrastructure. That is essential. So these are all, you know, linked to technology. If that is sorted, you can see that development can occur on its own, because people will get this thing and use it to their advantage to make things happen for themselves.
Absolutely. It's almost like the subsoil of the future growth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much there, SR, for your views there. During the week, was it 23rd of May, the world marked International Day to End Obstetric Fistula. Here, let's listen to Mr. Abubakar Jah to tell us a bit more about the condition.
Urine is coming out all the time. They cannot go to the bathroom all the time to wash themselves, because every minute it is coming out. Every minute it is coming out. So they get smelly. Their private part gets rashes. They are ashamed to come out, because they don't want to come out anywhere anybody perceives their smell. And it is because you have not been able to deliver the baby in time. Most of them, their babies die. So you've lost your baby. You've developed a hole inside your bladder. You are leaking urine. The next person you lose will be your husband. The relatives also leave the woman to stay in a very isolated place. A lot of them stay near the toilet, on not even a mattress, because they cannot lie down on a mattress. The mattress will be soaked with urine.
They're quite extraordinary. Women, when they are unassisted during childbirth, then that could put pressure, isn't it, and on the pelvic bone, and then eventually that could be a hole that would give them hellish lives, really extraordinary. But when the doctor was talking there, talking about the first person who lives is the husband and what the family does, quite unbelievable.
Yeah, unfortunately, our society is not very, how would I put this, it's not very tolerant to disease, particularly if this is the other person. If this happens to a woman who comes into a family and got married there, she is seen as the other person. And for them to tolerate that kind of a thing, most people find it difficult to do. But this is lack of education for people to understand that diseases come, and the reason that they come may not be the fault of the victim, and these are things that also are treatable, and I think people need to get more aware of the causes of these types of terrible ailments, to avoid things that are going to make that to occur, and then to help those who suffer, giving care so they are not isolated, neglected. That is going to create, some other effects, psychological effects, trauma and all whatnot. It's a very sad situation that it is mostly our women who suffer, fistula, and it's a very sad situation, really.
Absolutely, it's unbelievable. First, we have to spread the science for people to know what it is. But the other part, but somehow, you have a good list of diseases that are sort of stigmatized. It's almost like that is a moral mark of some deficiency in you. It's an extraordinary mindset, and that surely also must be another angle that we must tackle as media people or journalists, CSOs, and that sort of thing. And this can be quite deep. It can be...
Yeah, it's the media, definitely a huge role to play, because you see, the way we portray them, the way we describe them, the way we refer to them, it's important, because we would use colorful adjectives sometimes when we do our reporting or our writing. So we need to be careful as to not to give negative, adjectives, to describe some of these unfortunate ailments, and help in the sensitization process into sensitizing women what causes it, how can it be prevented, and when it occurred, also to sensitize the people how to tolerate it, to understand that this is something that would occur to any woman who's unlucky. But then it's not supposed to be something that would make the other family to cast out the victim of the disease.
That's it. And when you look at life, any of us can fall victim, can fall prey to any kind of disease at any time, as long as we are alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
when we are alive, we are, we are bound. We how to call it? We don't escape these things. That is, these kind of diseases or disabilities. We can't have them at any time in our lives.
So we must be empathetic. For tomorrow, it might be us, then a different disease. Thank you very much there, S.I. Jalo. Now we go on to our next story. It is known to all that in this country, individuals and businesses do not take out insurances. Here we have the CEO of Appropriate Insurance Solutions, Mr. Kausu Kedabo. Give us his reasons why.
The low insurance awareness still persists, characterized by a poor image of the industry, despite several efforts in raising awareness both at national, regional, and international level. We have the WICA, we have the AIO, we have the local, forum, trying to sensitize the public.
Pa Aliou Silla, the Commissioner of Insurance, said the Central Bank of the Gambia has made significant progress in enacting new laws that will hopefully put the insurance industry on a par with best practice in the sub-region and beyond.
It is estimated that the digitalization has the capacity to increase premium premium collection by 30%. Right now, it is at 1%. That's the general estimate. It has studies have estimated that it has the potential to 30%, and all the attendant advantages related to digitalization, So big data, analysis of big data, fast processing of claims and underwriting, accuracy, you know, all these things are challenges.
There we have it. Low awareness, and we are also told that they've got a poor image, really, especially when it comes to insurance companies' inability to meet obligations under motor insurance, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
so they've got a bad name there.
Yeah,
bad
insurance
press.
is one of those services that is very much misunderstood, and because they haven't done enough, you know, to sensitize people about what insurance is, why should one take insurance, how beneficial insurance would be, and what do they do after. This is why there was the noise that the drivers complained that the insurance insurance companies are scammers, which was, I think, far-fetched. But really, I think the insurance companies needed to do a lot more education, a lot more sensitization as to what they do and how people should benefit, that it is not something that you just dip your money into and at the end of the day they just pick all the money and give some to government in tax and not keep the rest.
That's it. And I also think that that sector is suffering from a common symptom that in most sectors relating to businesses and business services and stuff, most things are done informally. Aren't they? So most areas are affected by this informality. So you wouldn't bother to take an insurance. You wouldn't do all the stuff that you should do within a formal structure. So don't you see that? Because of the informality. So we are not surprised that there's low awareness in this area.
Yeah, that is part of it. And some people would question what's the point of paying for an insurance, you know, for quite a number of years, and sometimes you may not benefit from it. That means you've just thrown money away. But the flip side is, if disaster occurs, then you try to, you know, you suffer. But then, like I said, the insurance companies are supposed to be, you know, sensitizing, not only having one or two programs organized. I think they need to be able to explain to people clearly as to what happens with your insurance and how it would affect you negatively. For example, you ask people, you go, I see insurance agents going to people and asking them, or trying to sell them life insurance. And say, what's the point of me buying life insurance? So it shows that many people don't understand these things and don't actually agree with it, even if they are told. They would prefer to say, okay, I would wait until when I fall sick and I pay for it than paying for health insurance. So I think it's a gross misunderstanding and misinterpretation of insurance policies in this country.
Absolutely. So the insurance companies themselves have to put their house in order, as it were, for people to get all trust, as it were. Thank you very much, SR. Now we'll go for a break. We'll be right back.
I am the light goddess. Everything I touch turns into light. I am the light at the end of the tunnel, and my technology is the answer. I am the happiness in your life. I keep you connected, and I am Q-Power. I am Q-Cell. I am Sunubus. We innovate, others follow. Call 111 for more information.
Hello, welcome back to the Weekend Review. I'm Mamadou sitting in for Ade Darame. We've already gone through 5 stories and we have 5 more to go. Our next story, well, this is a case of a successful PPP, public-private partnership in providing public services. Let's just listen to the mayor of KMC.
I therefore want us all to recognize Mr. Mohamed Jah of Q Group for believing in us, for having the courage to invest in our common dream for the benefit of the Gambian people. With the unwavering support of Mr. Jah, we then launched the Mbalit project.
Yes, right there, the Mbalit project. They didn't have any money. Approach a private company who was willing to pre-finance, and then you pay everything back at the end. You know, the CEO of the Q Group, Mohamed, just said, well, they've paid everything back. That's an interesting model, really, for other bodies to see what they can do.
Yeah, it's a sensible way of doing things, to making things or having things done. You have a serious issue, a serious concern that needs to be addressed. You do not have the means. Someone has it and is prepared to provide the necessary funds so that that service that you want to provide is provided, you know, be it in profit or not. You know, it makes sense to do that. And if you, as the service provider, is able to get the job done and be able to pay back, that is a success story.
Absolutely. And you realize that it's important for us to talk about this, because any sector you touch, any institution you touch, when you ask them, they tell you we don't have resources. So one must come up with new ways of how to mobilize resources. It's not simply enough to say that, oh, we don't have A, we don't have B, we don't have C. That is why some people say that when it comes to management, maybe that imaginative quality is more important than anything else, because that's the one that can see solutions when others will see only problems.
Yeah.
So it matters that you have a dynamic, energetic person leading things, then you begin to see perhaps some results.
Yeah, in addition, reputation of the institution is important, because if the investor wants to invest and doesn't see the institution as a reliable partner, that is going to be a difficulty. So institutions will have to build their reputation in terms of being reliable, being able to provide the service that they say they are going to provide to the masses. If they are able to do that, this is going to give the investors confidence to be able to invest their money, because they are not actually throwing it away. It's not for free, you know. So they would be able to come in and invest in reliable institutions that will be able to provide service that is going to be useful to the people. Everybody would want to be part of that.
Absolutely.
So that is key. To be able to have the dynamic leadership is one thing, but to have that trust, you know, for investors. So that is what you need to build first. Build the trust, you know, do something people will see with the little resources that you have, and make it work. Then people will see, okay, if I come in here, then that is going to also work.
Absolutely. When you establish your credit worthiness, then you can even go back to the same investor and do more and to others.
Exactly. Yeah.
A very important point there, Esther. Thank you very much. Now to our next story. During the week, the president received the Chinese ambassador. That was possibly his last diplomatic engagement, as it were, as he has come to the end of his tour of duty, one can call it that. Let's just listen to him on the China-Gambia relationship.
Under the guidance of His Excellency President Xi Jinping and His Excellency President Barrow, we made a joint effort to promote our cooperation in various fields and achieved yield fruitful outcomes. The political mutual trust between our two countries has been deepened. We support each other in the international affairs.
Yes, Esa, that's it. Ma Jinshun, is it time for him to go? So, interesting there that whilst he was talking, we were shown the International Conference Center, I think, inside, and then the roads. The relationship, some people are quite skeptical about China with Africa, in Africa. But how do you see it? How are we doing so far?
I think China's engagement in Africa is putting the traditional allies, the traditional partners, in a very tight corner. because China would make things happen. And this is what Africa wants. We want to build a road, they want to see it, not somebody giving us all figures and very complicated ways of doing things. China would make things happen. We want a conference center, they build a conference center. We want to bridge this place, it is built. So that is making it very uneasy for our Western allies. And it is everywhere that China is moving in. The Western countries are catching up. You can see what is happening around the South Pacific, around Australia. The cooperation between China and those islands, Solomon Islands, it is putting Australia under pressure. Similarly, if you come to Gambia, what China had done in this short period, you cannot equate it with any. Probably there are, we may not know where there are assistance that we may not be aware of, but what we are able to see, and this is what Africans believe in. Development is what you see, it's not the figures that they tell us. So I think the relationship between China and Gambia has actually made a lot of things important to happen. The Basse Bridge is key. If you are used to traveling in that area, you realize that makes a huge difference in communication between the north of the Gambia and the south at that part of the country.
Absolutely. So here, what we're interested in is really the infrastructure. So economically, the non-alignment. You see, our strategy after independence was sort of non-alignment and working with everybody. I think Sada Jawara perfected that system. So, are we still in that kind of world? You see, there was this talk of we've gone post, Cold War, as it were. So there are new alignments, as it were. But are we still on secure ground, saying that politically perhaps non-aligned, and economically, well, wherever we get the money from, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that is the safe way to go, to not align, and then because that would put us under pressure, and we are most of the time at the receiving end of those repercussions of certain global issues. So the best thing is to try to deal with everybody, mind our business, and follow our interests. I think that is more important, and not to meddle into other people's backyard. Although we know they will always meddle in our backyard when we do things, but because we are smaller, probably we needed more of the support than actually the criticisms from them.
Yes, and sometimes even have a position. You see, if we perhaps had the AU, as it were, sort of singing more or less from the same hymn sheet, as it were, more united, more cohesive, singing, talking with a single voice. Now that would have had more impact than what we have now.
Yeah. That is going to affect not only the West, but even with China and the other powerful countries. Because you see, the division of Africa is actually helping the other part of the world, not Africans. And you can see, even though we have the AU and all these ECOWAS protocols and everything, it doesn't benefit us. Because even for you to be able to transport people from Gambia to Senegal is a challenge. It is not possible. Why? We are the same people, speak the same language, eat the same food, and we can't even allow each other to move freely among us. But how about the larger part of Africa? So this is why we are going to continue to be fragmented, and this is what the other people will use, or the other part of the world will use, to come and further divide us based on their interests. So if you have an issue in your country, one would support one area and the other, this is why you have some areas trying to, to be secessionists, like if you go to Nigeria, this whole thing of the Biafra is coming back, really scary. You go to Cameroon, they are fighting because of they don't speak the same colonial language. It's really serious. It's a serious indictment on Africa.
So these demons, they never quite die, do they? Something always lives on. Thank you very much, Esa. Now to our next news story. A global conference on disaster risk reduction is underway in Bali, Indonesia. Yeah, let's listen to the United Nations, the head of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction.
We are convening this global platform at a very challenging time, to say the least. Disasters have always been a plight, but we are now living in the aftermath of a disaster, the scale of which the world has not seen in many decades. It has upended conventional understandings of risk and what it means to manage disaster risks. All the while, drivers of risk that existed before the pandemic have only grown stronger.
Yes, very, very strong words there, calling it consequential. But again, how many times have we seen these high-powered, high-level conferences? Yes, they could come up with all sorts of recommendations and reports, fantastically written, but certain crucial elements, in most of these, you need the financing, certain crucial elements are never there, and some of us, the countries, very vulnerable, very susceptible to this sort of thing, the tragedy, this climate change. We've been complaining that these people want us to commit to certain measures and they agree to pay, but they really never pay. There is a problem here.
Yeah, it's similar to the economic situation. We are always on the receiving end of the negative issues that affects the world, and environment is one of the major ones. We may not be responsible, we are not very much responsible for most of the consequences of environmental disasters, but we are mostly on the receiving end. If you look at what happened in Sierra Leone not long ago with the floods, what is happening in other parts of the country, it's all because of certain carelessness that is happening to the environment in other parts of the world that is affecting us, and we find it difficult, or we do not have a choice. And if it happens also, even to mitigate to be able to mitigate it becomes a big challenge. If you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, is one thing also that affected us, and it wasn't our doing, or it's from other parts. If it were how to call it, if it were issues that are coming from our end, it is going to be treated differently, because we can even see the emergence of monkeypox. Yeah. You know how it is being attributed to us. But in a nutshell, the disasters that occur that affect us are most of the times the consequences of other people's actions elsewhere. We are a contributing factor. For example, if you look at the felling of trees in our environment, particularly in the Gambia here, the logging thing had been a controversial issue, but it is all part of those events that would trigger environmental disasters.
Yes, that's absolutely right. The local issues, what we should do, but more generally, this is what sticks in the gut. Because overall, when we talk about climate change, our contribution to it is quite minuscule. But again, we stand to suffer the biggest damage, the most severe damage to it, and we really do not have the resources, the money for anything. So we rely on them. This is really the difficult thing about it. Because even there in Bali, we saw Rohima Aliklo on the news. They are talking about what we think that is going to happen to Banjul, the prognostications regarding Banjul in some years' time, because of it's below sea level, we will think. But this is really what we face. What an extraordinary prospects.
Yeah, even though we try to do our small things in our own way to protect our environment, but in the end, if the big players didn't also do similar measures, we find it difficult. There is a complaint that when in Brazil, you know, what is happening to the Amazon, you know, countries that are not signed up to certain treaties about emissions and things like that, America pulling out of certain, you know, treaties. These are all things that would affect us, and it's difficult for us as small countries trying to fight other issues, and then the environment is also on the other side, which is being a bigger problem.
Absolutely. Thank you very much there, Isa. Now we go to our next point. Well, during the week we celebrated, African Liberation Day, or otherwise known as Africa Day. Yeah, we listened to the head of a United Pan-Africanist movement. Tell us why his movement decided to celebrate it.
We are calling, this is the day that we are commemorating the African Liberation Day, to awaken the spirit and also give the right respect to our fallen heroes, the 33 leaders of Africa that met in Addis Ababa. They have gone, and they have laid the foundation, and they have passed the baton to you and I. And the question is, Are we going to go further with the button?
Yes, we just had him there to awaken the spirit of the dead heroes. How do you reflect on these days?
I think the button dropped before it got to us. Because, you know, the founding fathers of this movement, when they started it, you know, the Western world was scared. No way that they can allow that to happen. And they meddled in it, and then in the end, our leaders kept fighting each other. And that is where the button dropped. So we didn't even get to have it. So the relay, actually, we faltered. We didn't complete the thing, and we're still struggling. Now, if you look at how Africa is divided, if you look at Gambia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Mauritania, these are the same people, you know. If you go to the Nigeria and also, you can see similar people, but we are all fragmented. And even though we are fragmented, we want to fragment ourselves again. Look at what is happening in Casamance. Look at what is happening in Nigeria, like I just mentioned. Look at what is happening in Cameroon. Look at in Morocco, the Western Sahara issue. It is all over the place. So this thing, it is a commemoration. I wouldn't call it a celebration, because there is nothing to celebrate. We wanted to have a single monetary union. It couldn't work. And then the Francophone picked it up here and there, and that's this divide of colonial language. Like I also mentioned, between us and Senegal, where is the need for all these protocols to be happening between us in terms of simple traveling of people, goods and people across the border. So the spirit of African, would I call it unity or coming together, really is going to be difficult to achieve, if not impossible, because like I said, the spirit is not there. Now with the descent, how to call it, the Western countries or the superpowers descending on Africa and further dividing us on their own interests, and coupled with other issues that we face among ourselves, this is going to be a serious issue. But it is an African problem, and I think Africans need to look at itself inward and try to make sure that this spirit that was there before is rekindled.
Absolutely. For me, this is really the key. Sometimes I'm sort of inclined to think that, did we get the conceptualization right? There were certain assumptions about what Africa is. Well, to me, Africa is a geographical area. All ideas, it depends on where you are. So maybe it seems to me that there were certain assumptions about Africanness, more political in many ways than economics, so anybody can just join in. So when I compare it, for instance, with the EU, and they are quite analogous, at first it was more of an economic union. So they dealt with certain economic infrastructure first, before the politics can come in. And I suspect that that's sort of quite important. So it seems to me, the way I'm thinking, even to have a fragmented EU, I do not mind. As long as you have a group that's serious about things and you have to fulfill certain criteria to join it, just like the EU. Yeah. So then you are really glued together by a body of ideas, not simply geography.
Yeah, that's a fact. But the EU, it began, as you stated, economic community. But then there was disaster first. There was the World War, you know, and where Hitler tried to invade countries. And when they stopped that, they saw the need to come together. You know, I don't want Africa to go through that, but there's supposed to be something that would bind us together. So the need that we definitely need to come together. And we have it. Because if you look at the economic situation of this country, globalization, everything, Africa have every reason to decide to come together. And then we need to look at one thing that binds us together, economic, union. That's not supposed to be very difficult, where Africa can trade among itself. Africa can determine the currency that they are going to accept, just like we are seeing that Russia is going through with the EU. But I think it's the will and the ability for Africans to be able to have leaders that see this, leaders who are sincere, not always thinking about themselves, to be able to achieve these kind of things, to come together.
Very interesting there, just final point. Some people will say that after the Second World War, when the political started happening, that was when it caught up with what had begun a long time ago from the writings of Erasmus to create a European consciousness. Everything began in the mind, then politics caught on. Thank you very much. Yes, so now we go to our final story today. President Macky Sall, in his capacity as the chairman of the AU, has promised that he will go to Russia, will meet the president of Russia and Kyiv. He said this in a meeting with the Chancellor of Germany. Let's just take a look at this clip.
Sall said he has received a mandate from the African Union to undertake the trip, for which Russia had extended an invitation. The Union wanted to see de-escalation in Ukraine and peace through dialogue between the two countries.
That's it. We have to be seen to be sort of being actively engaged at that level. Surely a good thing.
Yeah.
And the effects, the dire effects of this war on us.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what Macky Sall is going to discuss with Vladimir Putin, because largely African countries have taken sides. If you look at what happened in the UN General Assembly, most African countries voted against Russia. Senegal did abstain, and a few other countries. But what is peace to Putin, and what is peace to Zelensky? Because there's even a talk that how to call it, Henry Kissinger mentioned about that Ukraine needs to give up some land to be able to achieve peace, and that was condemned in Ukraine widely. So, but what is Russia looking for? Why did Putin invade? What is he trying to achieve? So he is trying to right now what the war is looking, how the war is looking at is like trying to annex part of Ukraine, and if that happens, that is going to be the bargain. You know, they would try to get that in addition to Crimea. So, what is peace? It would determine what Putin wants and what Zelensky would accept as peace.
That's it. Just as we said that it's still the sort of Cold War paradigm that is still on. Because for Henry Kissinger to say that perhaps we should give them land, so that's almost like the Second World War. What do you call it? The sphere of influence politics that was agreed was in Yalta. Was it the Yalta Conference and stuff like that? Quite interesting. But here, you see how it is affecting us. That's it. What can possibly be our position now? We touched on it earlier when we talked about non-alignment. But here, quite clearly, I'm not sure how it's going to play out. What would be the ideas constituting this non-alignment in this world today? That's it. But as you said, what can Macky Sall, how can we possibly influence issues in Ukraine?
Yeah, very difficult. If you look at the sanctions on Russia, they've never been seen before, and that means everybody else would comply, or else, you know, you're also going to face the repercussions of those. And so now, what is the AU going to give to Putin, for Putin to listen to the AU, you know, in terms of the peace that AU is preaching, or what kind of peace that they are advocating for that would be acceptable to Putin? Because you see, Putin is the aggressor here, and he is the one who can stop the war. You know, he is the one who can be convinced and be giving the incentive to be able to stop the war. So if that isn't achieved, if Putin have seen most of Africa be aligned to the other part, then it will be difficult for Putin to listen to Africans.
That's it. But this will be interesting. Perhaps even Macky Sall, from this talk, from there, they could come back and even review what would be their position, be it in the UN, be it anywhere else. And you may find us, you know, the EU, Africa, agreeing with the idea that we should, Ukraine should possibly concede some land for peace. And we could even support that view.
Yeah, it's a possibility, but it would be a very controversial issue. Because you can see what the response from Zelensky to those comments as, you know, that why, you know, Henry Kissinger was a young boy when they were fleeing Nazi Germany, and then why didn't he actually concede or whatever. So those are things would come, because there are African countries who have similar issues that, like we mentioned before, the Western Sahara issue is there, you know, the Amazonia issue is there, the Biafra issue is there. So all this can come up, you know, and it will be difficult for Africa as a bloc to do that. Like I said, Africa needs to provide Putin with an incentive to accept, you know, not only because we are suffering, help us. That wouldn't do it.
Thank you very much there, sir. Fantastic for illuminating views, really, on the Weekend Review. And thank you very much, viewers. Until the next time, bye-bye.